Fill your thirst beside the river. Wash the journey from your hands. Feel the comfort flow inside you. Come this far, you understand. Fear's not allowed, where dreams can be lost or found.
Hi, welcome to our show, Healing Outside the Box. My name is Traci Crampton.
And my name is Rosemary Lachance, and we're Reiki practitioners. And we have with us a very special guest tonight, Hans Wilhelm. He's an author and illustrator of I'll Always Love You, and 200 more books for children and adults, with over 35 million books in print. His books have been translated into more than 20 languages and have won numerous international awards and prizes. Many of his stories have become successful animated television series. As a noted speaker, Hans Wilhelm has been inspiring audiences around the world with his spiritual and life-affirming concepts that he shares in many of his books. Welcome, Hans. So nice to be with us tonight.
Thank you, Traci. Delighted to be here.
Okay, I have a few questions. I wanted to ask you, just to start off the show, if you could tell us a little bit about your background.
My background, well, I grew up in Germany, as you may hear from my accent. It hasn't changed much.
Beautiful.
And when I was 19, I decided I had to get away to see the world, and I went to Africa and lived in Africa for many, many years. I consider that more or less my home. But the situation in Africa became increasingly more difficult, so I really basically had to leave everything behind one time and didn't know where to go. So I looked on the globe and I said, which are the most beautiful places in the world to live? And I found sort of 20 places, and I traveled around the world for 3 years and lived all in these places to find a new home.
That's wonderful.
And yeah, I just met a lot of wonderful people, and it's just masters and gurus and whatever it is, and it was a very special trip, only to land up finally in Fairfield County here in America in the end, where I've been living now for some 25 years or something.
Meant to be,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
Nothing in life is a coincidence.
Yeah, no, everything is carefully orchestrated.
That's right. So you wrote the Book of Courage, which here it is, and I have given this book for gifts to many, many people. There it is. And it's a wonderful book and has everything that you need in it. And how did you come to write this particular book after writing all these children's books?
Well, I didn't write it after I did the children's book. I started to write it much before. Actually, it was never supposed to be published. Yes.
Really?
No.
Wow,
this book is my personal journal for the last 40 years. See, when I grew up, I realized as a kid and a young person and so on, I was always a bit nervous, always a bit fearful, worried about the future and everything else, etc. Not to an extreme neurotic kind of style, but just enough to be sort of never at ease with myself, with the present or the future. So over time, I learned more and more of how to find techniques or quotes or whatever it is, which always put me back into balance again. So for 40 years, I wrote down all these notes, ideas, suggestions, insights from many different sources, and a lot also from my own discovery. And I wrote them into my own journal, just sort of in case I one day need something to look up my own writings, which I frequently had to do in the past. When I had to go to difficult situations, and I just took my book, my own journal, and read my own journal, which were all uplifting, kind of stimulating and helpful tools. And that was never meant to be published because it's very, very personal, it's very private.
Yes.
I usually like to pretend I know everything and I'm in charge and I've never any fears and worries, and I'm just sort of the perfect person, but in fact is not. And one day I had lunch with my editor and we talked generally about writing and so on, and I talked about my journal, and she was very interested. She says, ever thought of publishing? He says, no ways, but with the right talking into it, etc. Says, well, if we make it right, and if you said, you see, I was a bit nervous. A book of quotations is very often. I usually don't like books with quotation because for me as a man, they're usually too sweet. There are too many rainbows, too many butterflies, and too many flowers in it. And I just.
And your book itself is very colorful.
And it is very bright, very direct, very, yeah. So I wanted to illustrate something which also appeals to the male taste. Something really sort of dynamic and vital and cheerful and whatever it is, but not too sweet. So when she says, that's what I would like to have, so it says, all right, let's give it a try. So I just sort of finally agreed to have it published, and it has taken on a storm because people just seem to be responding to it. I wasn't the only one who has have had fearful moments and worried moments.
Not at all.
So I seem to have tapped into something which is really, really important to many people, to find some help and some kind of guidance, which we all have it in ourselves, but we forget it. The problem is when we are in a difficult situation, as you know, and when our mind goes in full speed and we are worried about something, etc., and totally overtaken by our own emotions, we don't usually have the time to really sit down, go deep within ourselves, where all the answers are. And sometimes a quote, a poem, whatever it is, can sometimes at least help us to stop us in our track. Says, hey, maybe it's more important for me to just sit down, go within myself, be quiet, etc., and see it all from a real different angle. I always believe the problem what we have is why we get so easily caught up in the drama of life is because we are too close with our nose to the tapestry. Like, for instance, we're taking a picture and we are so close where we see the black spots and they give us fear, and the white spots, oh, this is great, and so on, but we never see the whole picture. And when we are in trouble, we have to step back from the tapestry of our life. And when we see the whole picture, we see it makes a beautiful pattern, a beautiful design. Wow. But we do not see that when we are really in it too much. And a book like this, or a good friend, or whatever it is, can help us to step back from our problem, which overtake us. And it is such a perfect, and when we see this, that everything has a perfect design and the whole life is perfection. And there is no chaos really as such, as everything is well done for us, and nothing happens to us, only for us, then you really fall in love with life, because you suddenly see this enormous, incredible system which is only there for us to help us. And all the so-called negative situations are only there to help us and to bring us onto the next level.
You gave me a wonderful idea. I think I'm going to carry this with me all the time now. And when I sure get to those places you're talking, I sure do this, all the time. And I never thought about it that way.
Absolutely.
That I'm too close to. You're right, because
we get too close.
Yeah. How do I pull myself out of this when I'm going down that path? It's like like in that book, The Power of Now. You get in that pain body. Right. When I go down that path. Right. Nothing can pull me out. It's like, I have to go all the way down. I don't want to go all the way down,
Yeah.
I'm going to take this with me, and when I'm going to make myself open it and read something, because a lot of people that I've given it to have told me that they do this. Not that they carry it around, but that they, in the morning or something, they just open it and read.
Any page you want.
I love Post-its. I have the Post-its up on my windows and my refrigerator, and I write the quotes, because you see them throughout the day, and it makes you stop and get perspective.
But you have to rearrange them, because our ego will get used to it,
get used to
and
them.
you don't see the second or third day anymore so quickly.
That's right. You're right.
Those little marks on the refrigerator, I used to have them too, but once I put them up, I basically ignored them instantly.
Yes,
you're right.
You have to move them around in honest places to really keep yourself reminding. And once you get more and more into the spirit of having more helpful and more distant thoughts, I think the question is only to see life, and I learned this over here, to see my life from a long distance. It's like an eagle. He can see, the eagle can see the total horizon from front to back, far away. Little mouse on the ground only sees so far, you see, and we should see like an eagle can see.
Like the microscopic and the macroscopic.
Definitely. See the big picture, and then you see it all perfectly orchestrated for our own growth, and it's beautiful. And we do not see how everything is so well balanced. We are living in a universe which we can only perceive because of polarities. We can only perceive everything around us through our senses because it has the opposites. We can only see gray because there's black and white, and we can see plus and minus, hot and cold, and up and down, and night and day. These extremes, polarities, have to be there for us to find our way through this life. So we, in our Christian or Western upbringing, we tend to see only one side of the polarity as good.
Make judgments.
Light, yes. And bad is black is bad, and whatever it is, and this is good, and this is right, etc., etc. We haven't been trained to see the full spectrum. We have to have both. To have worldly peace,
Contrast.
we need war, which is very important. A lot of people say, I don't want war, I don't want war. You cannot have war if you want peace, because one doesn't exist without the other. Inner peace is something different than worldly peace. But a lot of people say, well, they're worried about the war, they don't like the war, and so on, which I think is a lot of BS, because most people want war. And I say that very clearly.
Really?
Because yes, if you just go by statistic, particularly men like to do some fighting and war. It is something in their nature.
You're right.
Be honest.
I'll let you say that since you're the...
No.
I'd be accused
Look, I've got the figures to back this up. Today, for instance, a new computer game comes out, it's Halo 3. Halo 3 is pure war, and it just will cash in more than $150 million in the first 24 hours it's on the market today.
My God.
It is bigger than any movies or anything else ever opened.
Oh my God.
That's how eager predominantly the males in their mind wants to play war. On our television, I don't know your television channels here, we have a war channel.
Yes.
I call it a war porn channel.
Yeah, we have that too. It's on
Men
History
love to
Channel,
see that.
History
They
Channel.
go to war, they love it. They call it right away the Great War. I don't know what was so great about it. Then they have the veteran clubs everywhere. They go back and just reminisce how wonderful it is. I'm not criticizing, not putting it down. For many men, that was the only time where they really enjoyed life, or at least felt life. I wouldn't say enjoyed life, felt alive.
Yep.
And it was very important for them. And afterwards, the humdrum life of married life and whatever it is just never made up to this, so they're clinging to it. There is something in the male nature which loves that war.
And we spoke about the chaos theory, about how it takes that disorganization, that chaos, to really spark our initiative, to make change, to reach another plateau.
It's just one of these extremes. Now we take the worldly peace on the side, which people say they want, which I do not believe. If we take worldly peace, let's say you have a business.
That's where all the women are standing on that side, right?
The women, no, the women sit in the middle. They wait till the men come back from war, and then they heal them to send them back again. That's the main occupation for them.
Right.
They love it. Yeah, they love to nurse them, heal, so they can just go back into the battlefield again.
Oh my goodness.
I'm really feeling that she is so strong. I was flying to Texas the other day. Next to me was a young soldier who was going to see his future bride. He was going to propose to her. He was on leave from Iraq. And we talked about it and so on, and I have a little different view of Iraq. I didn't say much, thank God, I kept my mouth shut. But so he talked for talking, and for him it was wonderful. He couldn't wait to go back to his buddies, and was very important because he was alive there. He knew he was doing a wonderful thing, etc. And says, yeah, who of us is right now, etc. That is his world, and I have to respect
perspective.
that. Yeah. And you see, when we speak of worldly peace, which is basically calm, quietness, we don't really want this, because most people go on to their 2-week vacation here or somewhere to the beach. And what do you do on the beach the first day? You think you're not lying there, you're getting a book. You're getting your romance novel or Ludlum or whatever it is, and there in your mind into another action, another form of war.
Or you got this music on. You're not listening to the seagulls and the rolling
People cannot
ocean.
sit alone quietly in their room.
No, they can't.
And that's why when people says, I don't want war, it says, look at the facts, look around, check the war away. For the time being, we are having an evolution in mankind where there's still a lot of people want war. And we have to just accept that. We can sit here and say, I shouldn't be, etc. But then I'm only not facing reality. And every time I do not face reality, I am suffering. I'm at battle in myself. I'm at war in myself. It shouldn't be, I should be better, I should be married, I should have more kids, I should be healthy, I should be whatever it is. Every time I have this should be, with the outside world, I'm at battle, at war. And every time I am suffering, I'm in pain because I'm not accepting what is. And I strongly believe in looking at reality what it is. And I accept the fact that there are a lot of people, like General Patton says, I love war. And they do that. And they go out there and they fight. And you have to accept that.
That's a wonderful way to look at it.
That's if you
really
do not look at reality as it is, you are in constant pain.
And I have been there in the pain, because I've been saying I should do this and I should do that, and this shouldn't be done, that shouldn't be done.
It's the judgment. I think that
wow.
You had a quote
We
here
grew
that
up
really stood out for me. Hold on, it was on page. It was the Seneca. It's not the situation, but our opinion of it.
Yeah.
It's not what's going on, but it's the inner conflict comes from our judgment of that situation. Correct.
And those judgments come. I always believe that we grow up, we come up with a lab computer in ourselves, and this lab computer stores everything what our parents tell us, what society tells us, the teachers, the preachers, and everything. And when we grow up, and suddenly the world isn't the way how they have told us. Every time the outside world isn't as the preachers and our parents have told us, or the computer is telling us, the computer gives us a negative feeling, and then we're upset.
You're right.
And the most important thing, I think, in this way also to understand whatever we consider is right is exactly because of the balance, is not opposite from another in society. Whatever we think right, the other society feels exactly wrong. Whatever we consider is wrong, another society feels right. That is a perfect balance in this world. When 9/11 happened, many of the people in the world were upset. There were other people dancing in the road.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you can take anything. You can, if you go now afterwards to McDonald's, you have your hamburger. I don't think you have, because you're too.
No.
But if you have, that's the American staple food. They love it. Now, if you grow in India, up in India, it's like eating your own grandmother.
Sacrilegious.
It is absolutely disgusting to even food. When I lived in the Philippines for a while, I didn't know it. But for the first few weeks, I was eating puppy meat. I mean, for dogs. I mean, they do have dogs there on the market. It's a staple food there. I wasn't aware of it. Until I went to a market and saw all these dogs there, which are sort of for sale. And for me, but it's a natural thing. Now, you eat your little puppy here, your snubby, sort of. You see, what one society calls great, another one is horrible.
Right.
And this is where the balance in this universe and this world is, which makes it so fantastic. And you can see that also politically. All functioning democracies you will find within Europe, America, and so on, they're all 50-50, more or less. You never find them 70-30. They're always balanced. There's always one part which holds on to the old,
yes,
and to protect my rights, and there's the other part who wants to go to the new and share with everybody. And this isn't whatever you call them in every country, but all the countries are around the 50-50 percentage in those functioning free democracies, because it is always balanced. Everything is balanced, and everything is. And when you see this from a distance, you are at awe.
Right.
And there is no chaos. There is no injustice.
There's no imbalance. I think of that often. Like, we see extremes. I mean, I know, like, in your book you have Charles Dickens' quote. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Yeah.
And I think of that often because some of my most difficult times have been intermingled with some, like, incredible, life lessons, or, friends that came out of the woodwork to help, like 9/11. It's a tragedy, but also some really brilliant,
That
things
quote
come
that I
out
had
of
told
it.
you, that Starman said, "I love you people because you're always at your best when things are at their worst."
Yeah, Eleanor Roosevelt says we are
always
like tea
balance.
bags. Only in hot water do we know how strong we are. Yeah.
That's good. I like that.
But the Ecclesiastes say the same thing. There is a time for everything. There is a time to heal. There is a time to fight. There is a time for war. There is a time for peace.
Right.
There is a time to hug and not to hug. The Bible itself gave sort of confirmed that everything is totally balanced. There is time for war. There is time to kill.
Right.
And when we understand that,
Life
now the key element is, because this universe has these polarities, the extreme on one side and the extremes, the masters and the sages always said, go the middle path.
Middle path, the middle road.
You don't go either. You don't get involved into the war, and you don't get involved into the worldly peace either. And the reason why I say the worldly peace, which everybody thinks is so great, peace means, let's for instance, your business is a peaceful business. That means the door doesn't open, the phone doesn't ring, the cash register doesn't make any sound. It's dead. That's what worldly peace is.
Oh, I never.
Yes, that is what peace, really, worldly peace is. It's nothing is happening. You don't really want to be there. You want in the middle path, you want a bit of challenge and a little bit of support.
Yep.
That's where the ideal place is. That's where you grow.
Because you don't want boredom. Because sometimes
Of
peace
course
could lead
not.
to
We want to
boredom.
be
When
challenged.
it's extremely
We
peaceful,
want to wake up from our
we
dream.
need to wake up. Right?
Yes. So we don't want really this total
Like a
illusionary
utopian.
dream.
Yeah.
Maybe on another level, and the ultimate reality, which I have only not even glimpses of, but I have an idea of it at least, maybe the divine reality, life is very different. But on this reality, which is the reality of polarities, we have just both, and we have to deal with, and we have to love both.
Right.
And once we really love both, we cannot fear, because everything is there to show us love. Love war. You don't have to be in war, but accept that in you is war. For instance, Rosemary
Yes.
said, you both couldn't be sitting here if there wouldn't be an incredible war going on right inside of you, right now. What I mean is all the T cells, all the immune system is working right now to kill all the invaders which are now going into your body continuously. If your immune system would shut down, you would be dead. Be grateful for that war, because the
Right.
war is in you.
I understand now. Yeah, that's a great analogy. I understand.
I
what you're
said, but
saying.
face reality. Let's not live in this illusion. Let's not become
Right.
more spiritual than we are, whatever it is. Just look at it as it is and see that it is all perfectly
I
orchestrated.
mean, I always think of, people when they get very upset about death, or they have a difficult time with death, they fail to see that, death decomposes. Our bodies decompose and give birth to new life. And without that, life would cease to exist. I mean, it's just...
Well, I was recently at Starbucks, and I normally don't like the coffee very much, but I was desperate.
I've heard that before.
So I have this cup, and there's these wonderful quotes on that. And there, this guy, Kühl was his name, a Starbucks customer, in 4 lines, he wrote what I have in the book and many other books written in long, many, many pages. And he said it so cleverly, he said it so wisely. He says, life is a school for angels. Love is a teacher, therefore never fear your homework. And
Wow.
death is merely graduation.
Oh, I got goosebumps.
It says everything.
I got goosebumps. That's
Yeah, it's a genius, this guy.
yeah.
Yes, so he says it. And death is a graduation. And nobody dies, everybody dies on time. If we really understand that
Yeah,
everybody
you're
dies
right.
on time because it is a perfect universe, then what are we worried about? Let's celebrate.
Right.
And let's wish them on, move on. We only cry about ourselves if somebody is, because we have to just
Yeah,
adjust it.
we're in the pain.
But if life goes on, if their graduation, if your kid graduates at school, you're usually celebrating. You're not celebrating when they go off to college. I went through this with my wife. That's a different story when they leave the house. But
Oh, and then the bills start coming, and the big bills.
no, that's as well. But the separation. But
Yeah,
before
too.
that, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
This is such a wonderful school, this earth here,
It is.
where we can learn all these things, and everything that happens to us is for us to learn to love. Anything what we do not love becomes our silent ruler.
Yes.
It's very important to realize. Any person, I mean, whether it's a president or
So
whether
you're
it
giving
is
your power
some of
to
the aspiring presidents, runners, or whatever it is, whoever it is who gives you some emotional charge when you see them on television, or anybody else. If they give you an emotional charge, they are ruling your life. And the key is to love everyone and everything. And we can only do that when we love everything within ourselves, because the outer universe, or the world as we see it, is nothing but a projection of ourselves. That's what Eckhart Tolle, you mentioned earlier, said it so wonderfully. This is the primary reality in ourselves, and this outside is a secondary reality. And the secondary reality is nothing than a projection of the primary reality. And if I have hatred in myself, I see
You're going to
hatred
see that
outside.
outside yourself.
And if there's anything I do not love in myself and I see it out there, I point the finger to that, but never back at me, which I should.
We discussed that in a previous show about the mirror.
Yeah.
That all of
Everything is a
these
mirror.
people, all of these circumstances mirror back to you something that you either judge within yourself or you cannot accept.
And that's why it's so wonderful that everything is lessons of love, whatever. A typical example, I always know this sort of a woman, mostly in this instance, but who doesn't love herself and really puts herself down, beats herself up always, will sooner or later, most likely, if she doesn't make a change, find a mate who beats her up physically. So the person coming into her
Attracting
life
that.
who physically beats her up is nothing else but a savior. We see him as a bad guy who beats this woman up. How dare he? But he takes on this difficult role as an angel incarnated into this world to teach this poor woman who doesn't have a high self-esteem a very strong lesson, because she finally needs to have the physical enforcement of her false belief.
I agree.
We see it all from the limited things, but when you see from a distance that all the criminals and all the so-called bad guys and everybody else who does so-called bad things for us, it's nothing else than teaching us lessons.
You know, I've thought about mentioning this in past shows, but I don't know, I have a feeling that I should because of what you just said. Remember lately about the ball player Michael Vick and the dog fighting?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love animals so much, and I was like totally appalled, it was horrible for me. I even drew some dogs in pain and things like that because it was just terrible. And someone pointed out something to me, like what you just said. How do we know that he didn't come here in this incarnation to make people aware of what's going on in the world?
I said that to someone about Saddam Hussein once.
Really?
I did not get a very good reaction.
But if John Smith did it, or Harry Pencil, or somebody that we don't know, it gets a little bit of write up and it's gone. But with Michael Vick, it's like everywhere. And people are aware, and other people are starting to say, well, listen, they're doing the dog fighting, they're doing the dog fighting there, doing the dog fighting there, and maybe we can stop this once and for all because it's a horrible thing. But he brought awareness.
Yes.
Okay, it's not a good thing he did, and he has to, pay for whatever in the worldly sense very much, and doesn't make me love him. I wish I could, but he did bring awareness.
It's a wonderful example.
So there you're talking about that angel that comes in and does this thing, but
we don't know. No,
it's not a good thing. But still, we don't know. So, like you said, you really can't.
No, that's why the judging.
Yeah, the judging is really, really, really
But
bad.
even the worldly punishment which we like to inflict on so-called people who go against the law is basically also not highly advanced, because punishment means I want something bad happen to you.
Right.
God doesn't want any bad happen to anybody else. This is our own kind of revenge feeling. So the whole concept of punishment, like we have here, particularly in the West, is something which is totally. It's difficult to understand from people, for instance, from Africa, where I came from. In Africa, we didn't have judges or whatever it is, the traditional way of Africa ways. What they had, the main reason is usually the elders of the village and so on. If there was a fight, if there was a killing, if there was anything, a stealing, a theft, which happens as much as anywhere else, the main purpose for the village elders was to bring the parties together, to find a reconciliation between the two parties, not punishment. If he had to work now for that family for the next 10 years to make up the loss of the sheep or whatever it is, that's not punishment, that is a balancing it out. And the idea was, how do we bring these parties together? And the most wonderful thing happened only a few years ago when Nelson Mandela became the president of South Africa. He actually did this in the entire nation. He created the commissions of truth and reconciliation, where a person who has committed a crime had to face the person whom he had crime against, and usually related to the apartheid regime. And if the person to whom he had committed the crime forgave him, and looked him into the eye and said, I forgive you, the crime was forgiven.
Wow, goosebumps again.
And it was incredible. Now I tell you another story. How powerful it can be done if our thinking changes. There was a wonderful, you may remember this story, there was a wonderful young girl, 19-year-old Amy Beale from California. She came to South Africa and to help in the transition, help the black people into the transition of their freedom. Now, she was on the way home, returning back to America. She traveled around, and in Cape Town, she was shot in the street by 4 black youngsters. And it was just after that, shortly thereafter, Mandela introduced the Truth and Reconciliation Committees, when the parents of Amy Beale came to South Africa, and they had to face the 4 young men who killed their daughters. Now, they looked them into the eyes. 2 of these boys had other criminal records that couldn't be released, but the other 2 were released, and they forgave each other. But not only did they forgive him, they adopted the 2 kids.
Oh,
Oh,
goodness.
wow.
And they are running the Amy Beale Foundation in South Africa.
Oh my God.
This is what we are
This is
capable
what-
of if we think
Exactly.
differently. This revenge thinking which we have in America, fight them, they kill us, we must go back, it is so caveman-like. There are people who can do this. And if the Beals can do it, you and I, everybody can do it. Sometimes you just need to see it, that somebody has done it. And then it says, I have the capacity as well.
Break that cycle of
Yes.
pain. Break the cycle.
Yes, we think so limited, so slow, but we can think much bigger. And once we understand that everybody else is no one other than sort of ourselves in a way, it's a different story of oneness altogether. We are not really hurting another person, we only hurt ourselves.
There's something that you told me a long, long time ago when we first met, which was what, 1982? And I never forgot it, and I quote it all the time. And
Uh-oh.
you said, everything that we ever do is either a giving of love or a cry for love.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Want to explain that to our people here that are listening to this show tonight?
Well, there is
A little
only
more.
love, this whole universe. And everything what we learn, what we have to learn is to learn to love everything. Everything and everybody, no exception. Saddam Hussein and whatever is, and the Iranian Prime Minister, our presidents, and the biggest enemies, including Hitler. We have to love everyone. Now, if we can say, no, I don't want to, I can't do it, it's fine. Nobody is rushed, nobody is
No,
pushed.
wait till you
but
can.
the only person who is suffering is yourself. Because in the end, we are all one. They're all children of God. God sees us, as I see it, as I understand it, in our purity, our innocence. And Shakespeare said it so well. It says we are only here like actors, coming onto the stage, having our entries and our exits and so on. And we're playing a certain role.
Yeah.
And it's fun, it's wonderful, sometimes it's painful and so on. But once we're off the stage, we are not that we are still an actor. We are not that role anymore. We are that actor as he is, pure and innocent. Not anymore what happened on the stage. And that's how God sees us. And if we see each other like this, we allow each other to be and to its fullest potential. If I see you and your total potentiality and your purity, and I recognize you and then address you like this, you grow into it. But if I continuously judge you as bad, as wrong, as evil, whatever it is,
yeah.
I keep you down.
So that goes with the concept of hell, which I personally do not believe in. I believe we make our own hell, but a God who sees us as perfect and divine, no matter what we do, could never condemn us to an everlasting torment place, imagination.
Not
my God,
Not my God either.
I think it's something that we've created.
Yeah,
We've
that's-
created
that's
in
a
that
It's a wonderful
punishment
way to
thing.
manipulate you. The churches have created that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a wonderful way to manipulate you. It says, if you're no good, you're getting into whatever, it's kind of damnation or whatever it is, so you better pay up or you better come on Sunday and give me your money and kiss my ring or whatever they do. I don't know. Or kiss any other body parts these days. But
That's great.
I don't know whether that's great, but
It's all good.
it's all good. Yes, yeah, all right. We have to love everything.
Yeah, but you're right. That's what happened. It does keep people in check, and and I could never understand it, how they could think that. I mean, I was taught that. I was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
And yeah, it kept me in check. But as I started my journey and to try to find what life was really about and what it was all about, I thought, how could a loving God condemn us to eternal
Right.
punishment? I mean,
that program is
I'd be
still-
afraid of him. I don't want to be with him. No.
But we are so programmed that we still
in
continue
your
to
lab
think
computer, Esther. You have
punishment
to
in little
erase
ways
it.
and subtle ways in
Yeah.
our life, even after we accept that may not be our truth anymore. It's still habitually.
It comes up. It's still that program in the
Yeah.
laptop computer.
It is.
It comes up.
It does.
It may not have that power anymore,
No.
but it's still there. And it's difficult to push the erase button for that one.
Yeah.
You're right. You're so right about
But
that.
once you do the loving, and even if you see there in that the loving, that type of teaching, like this was hell and damnation, maybe it was necessary for you to grow up with that kind of thing. I don't know, but nothing happens without a reason.
Yeah, you're right.
And
The
maybe it
evolution
was
of your
something.
spirit at this
Now
point.
it's the time for you to let go. Now you can help someone else who is maybe also too narrow on damnation kind of idea to maybe help them and says, look, maybe you like to look at something else. The reason that this message was taught to you, I don't know what the reason is, but it's definitely a reason for that. And it's a blessing in it. Everything happens for the good, for you and for the best of you. So if you look at back and says, okay, I had this teaching, and maybe I can now understand. For instance, you're far more compassionate to other co-Catholics.
Yes.
And very often we do get into the pain and to situational illnesses so that we learn compassion and understanding.
You're right.
I often thought, I know that many people in the healing profession often think that they have to be completely healed before they can go out and practice, and for a long time I think that held me back until I realized that we're all working through this, and a lot of times I think that people who come into this profession take on an extra load to learn these lessons, to grow in compassion for others.
One of my teachers said this: we never walk the path, walk our talk. We always limp our talk. And it's very important, and everybody does that.
Yes.
If you really look around, it gives you a lot more compassion to everybody. We all limp our talk because by talking about it, we are still digesting it, we're working it out through ourselves, we're helping others, we're open for it, and teaching it. Yes, and through teaching, we're just sort of learning ourselves. So love yourself for limping your path, or your talk. I think that's one of the things which I sort of took a lot of pressure off my shoulders. Says it's okay not to be perfect. And in my book I mentioned also for the future to be a good leader or whatever, to really see the world and to improve it. All the people like Churchill and everybody else and Lincoln and so on, these are these supposedly great leaders. They all were sort of miserable,
they had
emotionally.
periods of depression. They locked themselves in their rooms for
terrible story there, but it doesn't matter.
No. Because then they had that's the balance. That's the balance,
the balance,
Yep.
And if they would have stopped this, I should never be a leader or whatever, it's because I'm not perfect, it wouldn't have helped as much. So that is okay. It's okay.
At a loss.
If we waited till we were all perfect, we would never do anything, would we?
No. We fly off this earth and we are done with it. Yeah.
You have a lecture that you're giving about From Fear to Freedom, is called?
Yeah, something like this.
Can you tell us a little bit about how we can get from fear to freedom?
From fear, freedom. First of all, I think again, when I said the polarity, there is fear is one of the polarities which everybody says is horrible, is best. And yes, we know the fear. It contracts us, it stifles us. There's a way it
paralyzes us.
It paralyzes us another way. But again, everything is wonderful balance. Fear has also a positive side.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, the peace is not always positive, it has a negative side, and war is not always negative, it has a positive side. But the same is with fear. Fear has a positive side, and I remember very well when I was in South Africa, and it was my home, and I just thought one day I woke up, there was noises in the townships close by. They were marching there, and there were really a lot of threats, and I realized that I had to leave this country because there would be bloodshed coming any day. And so I basically left very quickly South Africa at the time, which was my home. It wasn't easy, but I did it. And I left out of fear. There was no other question. I cannot say I left it because I wanted to go somewhere else. I left out of fear. But that fear really prompted me to move on, to see the world, to come to America, start a total new career, which takes me now around the world, meet the most wonderful woman in the world to marry. And it wouldn't have happened had I been staying in America. So fear is like a cannonball which shoots us sometimes into the direction. And the other important thing is fear as a sensation in our body. It's very interesting. Fear, if you go, two people go on a roller coaster, and for one it is the most frightening, horrible experience. My wife doesn't like it, so it's awful. And the other one is exhilarating.
Ecstasy.
It's wonderful. It's the same emotion, but it's differently interpreted.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they are so close.
They are so close. They're basically the same. It's the same excitement.
Yeah.
That's why fear, replace it with the word adventure. And fear, F-E-A-R, means feeling excited and ready.
Wow.
So when you see fear, the positive side, as I said, look at everything on both sides is totally balanced. Fear has a positive side. See the positive in it, get it ready, get excited, feel the excitement and ready. And you may approach things very, very differently. And it's a wonderful word if you just go ahead with it sometimes. Sometimes just to withdraw, you have to find it individual, whatever your inner voice tells you. But it can be an exciting start to do something new, to get out somewhere else and do something new. You cannot do anything wrong in this world. The worst thing, you cannot do anything wrong, because the worst thing is you can always only fall into the hands of God, whatever you do. Wherever you fall, whatever you do, you cannot screw up. Life cannot be screwed up. Wherever you take a so-called detour, which you may consider as a detour, you learn so much. And is it really a detour? Were you not maybe supposed to go that way? Who knows? You cannot screw up.
And what you think might be a missed opportunity may lead.
Yeah, you can only screw up if you compare in your image how your life should have been. Then he says, oh my God, I now should have been married, have 5 wives or whatever it is, and 15 kids or whatever, and I don't. So I must be a failure, it must be terrible. Only when I compare the image which I have with my lab computer, inner lab computer tells me how life should be, and I'm not there. Right. Then I've got this discrepancy, again, and judgment comes, etc. And then, but only in my own eyes.
I have a lot of troubles with regrets of the past. I didn't do this right or that right, so it took me to where I am now, and I'd rather be there instead of here. But I didn't do it right. I goofed up. I messed up. Regrets. I know we all have regrets, and sometimes they just eat us up. And I can get on a regretful, in a mood, and I can just keep going and going and go, stop, okay. And somebody once said, well, if you knew now if you knew then what you know now, would you do that same thing? Oh, God, no. Well, then.
That's a lesson.
Yeah,
that was a lesson.
But it's hard to get out of that, what do you call the computer that keeps programming the laptop.
Yeah.
Because it'll keep coming up. And I go, but you already, but okay, we'll suffer a little more.
But
That's
the program on the computer comes from your parents and your early environment.
Oh, yeah.
Everything. Every regret you probably have is you only compare to some kind of message given as your childhood.
The shoulds. You should be doing this. You should be doing that.
Yeah, they did a lot of that.
And you face reality, and reality is another word for love.
Really?
Wow.
Yes. If you look at reality is perfect. It's only when we project our own fears and worries and whatever it is on how things should be and so on, then we have got the pain. But we do not have the pain when we accept reality. Suffering is nothing else but rejecting of what not is. What is not. Sorry. Suffering is rejecting what is.
What is.
What is.
And what about suffering and our material attachments? I know you spoke a little bit about this in your book, about our letting go of our attachments, our emotional attachments to material things. Because it's really about
it's the attachments to it. I mean, how much we are bound to it. It's nothing wrong to have material matters. It's just the attachment to it. If we identify with those material things, if we
let them define us, right?
Define us. That's the word. Yes. Then we have problems and letting go. But courage is nothing else but really knowing to let go of the things which we no longer serve us. Let go of everything that doesn't serve us any longer. And that is much easier than when you really understand that these things may no longer be necessary to us. They no longer serve, and I can let go of it. And it's not easy, because this whole society we are living in, material items are very important, and I'm subject to that like everybody else. And I don't like to lose my bank account either. And I do not deny. But if it happens, I will have to accept it and find out and move on with it. And I know I will. And I know I can. I've left my home and everything in Africa, so I started anew again. I can do it. I have the experience. I'm not over worried. But I will do that too. And it's fine, and something else will come up and so on. And I really believe, or I've got the sense that time may be a little bit more difficult in the future coming here. The next few years, I think worldwide, and particularly in America, will be very difficult. The light becomes a bit more dimmer before it becomes light again. So in these times when a lot of structures, social structure, political structure, financial structures may collapse or may be coming to very difficult situations, and people will suddenly find themselves in totally new situations, then I think a book like the Book of Courage is the perfect book to sort of bring you back to your essence of who you are. Absolutely. And for that purpose I have written this book, for myself as for everybody else, because when times are becoming more tough, we have to remind ourselves that we are just like a raw diamond. And from the perspective of a raw diamond, the cutter, the grinder, and the polishers are just like the incarnation of the devil. They are horrible. But without their work, our sparkling beauty would never be revealed. So yes, there will be harder times, but these harder times will come for our good, for nothing else. And we will go through this victoriously, and we will become much richer, much more compassionate, much more, as a nation, we will become much more humble, which I think is very, very important. That's why I say this Iraq war, everybody is upset about it, and I wish that we wouldn't have to do it, but I think it will do a wonderful things for us Americans, and I'm American now too, to learn humility. And I see this in the history as well, again, as you take reality, the big bullies of the past were Germany and Japan, and they really were bullies. And wham, they got wanged and then down, crushed. I mean, Germany was flat. When I grew up, there was not one stone on top of each other. It was absolutely carpet bombed. Wow. The cities were flat. And thanks to the Marshall Plan, I like to put in here with American help, Germany and Japan within a few years were top leaders again, economically. But you didn't see them politically. Politically, they were quiet.
Yeah, they were.
And Germans hardly knew what the colors of their flag was. No more nationality, no more patriotism. Like Einstein says, nationality and patriotism are the infantilism of mankind. It's a sort of something when a nation is very young, they do this sort of silly things. But it's gone. So the bullies Germany and the bully Japan became suddenly a mature nation. And we still have to learn this. We are still bullying the world, I wish to bullying.
Yeah.
And I don't see this as criticism, I just observe it and I'm part of it, and I live of it and benefit from it. But I also know that bully, which is part of me, now has to learn total humility and understand that we are part of this world. We are not the ruler of the world. And once we really take our humble part in this circle of nation, we will be wonderful again. And everybody will love us, and we will come to visit us and see us again. We will be an exciting nation, but we have to learn humility.
That's
and
right.
it is the evolution of every country reflects our own individual evolution.
Yes.
And
so
this country is relatively new, you know, in the global.
It is, that's why it's not a criticism, it's just it has to be done.
I was saying we're adolescents still, we're rebelling.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
It's a typical kid in bully school. That's how we behave.
It's people today especially are so busy with their lives and trying to make a living and what they're trying to do, and I noticed everywhere I go they're just totally self-absorbed and they with their problems and everything, and I wish things could be different. I wish people could come together more and care about each other, but it only happens when something happens. In my darkest hours, I made the best changes in my life.
Yeah.
When everything is going nice and smooth and the people have what they need and everything's, this is a great life, but nothing's really happening, like you said.
Right.
And it's
little growth.
Yeah, it's too bad that has to happen.
Yeah.
But it does for now until we reach that point where we can't say, okay, we must do this, we must do that. But right now we just sit nice and comfortable. If it doesn't affect us in our home personally, we won't help make any changes in the world.
Comfortable shoe.
Right.
The comfortable shoe.
Right. And that's a shame.
But making the changes in the world, yes, that is wonderful. But I think it's, again, first of all, we have to make the changes in ourselves.
I knew you were going to say that, yes. I am the change.
Yeah, I am the change I want to see.
I want to
world.
see, right. You're right, you're right.
It is true. If I don't like the war in Iran or anywhere else, it is only because I am at war in myself.
Right.
And I have to love the war in me totally and see its purpose in me. And when I do that, the war out there is taking place and it will run its course, but I will not be affected by it in a way negatively. Absolutely. And then I can make positive changes because I'm no longer doing it from a negative charge. I do this because I do it out of love. I'm trying to, whatever I think I can do about the war outside there, from the level of love, and not because something is wrong with me. I mean, I've met a few anti-war protesters in my life, and I don't know about you, but they were usually the most
they're warriors.
inner-tone people. Incredible, because they fight the war outside and do not take care of the war within.
Yes.
And you see sometimes an admiral or somebody, a war maker there, they're very quiet, very relaxed. I kill, the mafia and so on. They don't have an inner war anymore. They just do it outside.
Do it on the outside.
Yeah.
They've made perfect peace with the war within them.
Yeah, they learn their lesson in their own way. But yeah, they are usually not the torn people in many ways. Sometimes they are, but very often they're not.
Yeah, that's
Because
true.
they're honest with that. I'm a warrior and I do it.
Well, and I've seen it like within my own life, like, okay, I'm against war, but, I'm arguing with my children, I'm arguing with my husband. I mean, that is war as well,
The most war is when you are fighting reality, when you do not accept what life gives you, when you think it should be different. That is the biggest war. And every time he says, I'm not there where I want to be, I should be, etc. The kid should be quiet or whatever it is, the husband should be back in time or what it should be, etc. Every time these shoulds, that are the most biggest wars we are continuously fighting reality and understanding that whatever there is, kids are dirty, kids are sometimes noisy, kids are and so on, and that's it.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. It's only when I put my laptop program on them, kids should behave nice, particularly when the visitors come and so on, etc.
Yeah. And you know what? That's when they really act up. And I've learned just through my own inner, journey that when I've wanted my kids so desperately to behave themselves, in public or around, in a social situation, and I'm just so concentrating on them behaving a certain way, oh boy, do they rebel.
Yeah.
And ever since I've calmed it down and said, okay, they're going to be who they are, it's amazing. They shine. They really shine.
Yeah. But kids are just because of so natural. They express whatever isn't right in the marriage or with the person who brings them up.
Oh, yes.
They express.
They're the little mirrors, little
the
tiny
mirrors. Yeah. Somebody, I think, Kin Sabah said, is a little Zen masters parachuted in our life to teach us lessons.
Who's the teacher and who's the student, right?
It's true. So kids are just merely expressing what we suppressing.
Heard John DeMartini say that once when I went to see him. Be careful what you repress, because your children will be the expression of that. That's really one of the great
teachers. Yeah, we have John DeMartini. Yeah, I must agree with that. Yeah.
So,
what other quotes have really touched you in that book?
Yes.
Oh. Well, going back to when you were saying about the tapestry and how we look at it too closely, I love the quote, life is like the wrong side of a carpet. We see many different color threads running every which way. They seem to make no sense at all, but one day in this life or thereafter, we will see the right side of the carpet, and then we will realize that everything has made a perfect pattern.
Yeah. Actually, that quote comes directly from this book.
Oh,
this is a book which I wrote for children. It's my spiritual book for children, all for the best. That whatever happens to us happens for the best, etc. So that is a quote of that book which comes to that resolution that at the end, that everything happens for the best. And when I finished this book, I heard of a Dr. White, became a friend. He is a doctor in I think in Arkansas, but anyway, she works in a hospital. And one day she was sort of relaxing, and she sort of had a vision, half meditating, whatever. She had this vision, and she saw this. She came into this room, huge room, and in the center of the room was a light being, a guardian angel or whatever it is. And she looked up and she saw a picture on the walls, and this picture was nothing but her own life, in like a mosaic, piece by piece.
Yeah.
Was beautifully fit together, the important scenes and very unimportant scenes. And she looked around in total astonishment. She says, "Oh my God! It is always everything is perfect." She said, "Had I only known that everything is perfect, I wouldn't have worried so much."
Right.
And then this light being put his finger on her lips and says, "Even the worrying was part of the perfection."
Wow.
See?
That's beautiful.
So I did worry always a lot about the book. That's the thing. It was all part of the perfection. Had I known that I have to write this, the book published so that other people read it. It is wonderful. It is so incredible that we do see it sometimes in our lifetime. But isn't it so often? Sometimes, you, for instance, etc., like when you've in college and school or whatever, and you fall in love with this football player, and just sort of gorgeous person and so on, and you're totally in the puppy love and can't live without him and so on, etc. And then he finally turns to another girl and whatever it is, and you're crushed. The end of the world.
Yes.
Dreadful.
Oh, yes.
And then 25 years, you come to the grand reunion of class school reunion, and you see this fat, bald man with a beer keg, and then you go back into your hotel room, you go down on your knees and thank God, you didn't make it
It all makes
That's how it
sense
is. It
now.
all
You
makes
saved
sense.
me from this.
That's how life is.
It is.
It is. It is.
And if we could use our reflection instead of looking back with regret, and instead looking back and seeing the lesson and the beautiful
And gratefulness.
pattern of it all.
Gratefulness is the key. To be grateful for everything, for every pain, for every loss, for everything. Gratefulness. Gratefulness is the one which really, for me, it always unites me easiest and fastest with my higher self, with my pure self, I think. The moment I see a situation and I can say God, and actually learned that very long time ago. I remember I had a spiritual group, and there was this elderly lady in her 80s and so on, and we talked about everybody, how do they cope with adversities, and she says, I learned this. I always say thank you God first, even if I don't understand it, mean it, and what I feel it, I'm angry, I say thank you God, because over time I always agree with him then, but she said first words when something happens negative, so-called negative, he says thank you God.
Wow.
Even if
that's
you don't
great.
believe it right there, but have it said, and then maybe afterwards says, why do I thank for this, etc. And then you go through it, and then you see maybe the positive side, and see that everything is balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, De Martini has this wonderful exercise where you write down all the
breakthrough,
negative sides of a situation, your divorce or whatever it is, the negative side, etc. And then you sit down and find an equal amount of positives.
Yeah.
Why this divorce could be the best thing in your life. And when you really, after a few pages, balance it, you get the tears of gratefulness. And it says, thank God, what a perfect situation. But we are so stuck on the one-sidedness, particularly through our Western upbringing. There's only one way of doing it, you know. Mm-hmm. And a typical example when we always think constructionists, we believe in building something wonderful, etc. But the East knows to build something, you have to destruct something. To build a house, you have to make an enormous form of destruction. You have to dig at earth, you have to kill the trees, etc. But we forget that. But it's wonderful balanced. So we have to respect destruction, otherwise there would be no construction. This is the dance of life, and it's always like this. The atoms get constructed and they disappear, and so are the stars and the whole galaxies and nations, and everything comes and goes. It's constant destruction and construction.
I know. You're right. You're right. We don't have a lot of time yet, but one of the quotes in the book that I really like was, "When we see ourselves as victims, we think only about killing the messenger and end up missing the message."
It doesn't need much explanation.
I know it doesn't, but
there are no victims.
We see ourselves as victims all the time, and that stands in the way of everything.
We are no victims. We have to get out of our pity potty and self-pity potty, and that's it. There are no victims in life. Nothing happens to us. Everything happens for us. There is no exception. Absolutely. Even the most, quote, negative situation is happening for us to learn something, to purify ourselves, to become better. Like the diamond I said earlier, gets polished, gets cuts at ground, to just sparkle.
Okay.
Well, Hans, we really want to thank you for joining us tonight. This has been very enlightening.
We would love people to go on your website so they can learn more about you and everything. So you want to tell them how they can get on your website? Oh, there it is, right there. www.hanswilhelm.com.
Perfect.
And that would be wonderful. I've read the whole website, and it goes on and on. All the books you can get, everything for children. It's a wonderful website. So, all right. So we're going to say good night. And we thank you again so much for being on our show. So much.
We want to leave you all with a quote from
Hans's book.
And here it is. Fear contracts the body and love expands it. By consciously breathing deeply and slowly, we can imagine filling our body with love and thus expanding it. And if you'd like to contact us with your questions for the show, or if you have any questions regarding today's episode, we'd be happy to answer them for us. Here are our phone numbers. And here is our email address. It's healoutsidethebox@yahoo.com. And for show schedules, you can visit the website www.entirebeing.com. Thank you.
Good night.
Goodbye.
And thank you.
Good night.
To the world you have made, always know you are the vision. See the truth, darkness fade.